All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're diving into the latest drama surrounding the Las Vegas Raiders. Surprise, surprise, there's more chaos. On Monday, their star wide receiver, Davante Adams, requested a trade. Now, the Raiders are stuck with $15.7 million in dead money, while whichever team picks him up will take on $16.9 million. Essentially, the Raiders will be paying a player who isn't even playing for them. But of course, they'll get some draft compensation out of it. The Raiders are reportedly asking for a second-round pick plus some extra compensation. Honestly, I don't think that's enough for a player like Adams. Sure, he's 31, turning 32 this December, and he's got a big contract, but he's still one of the best receivers in the NFL. Put him on a good team, and they instantly get better. Just look at the Raiders. If you take Adams away, they're a much worse team. They're already struggling with their quarterback situation between Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Minshew's been solid this year, but nothing special. Without Adams, the Raiders are left leaning on guys like Trey Tucker, with Jakobi Meyers becoming their top receiver. DJ Turner got more involved, even scoring a rushing touchdown against the Browns. Tyreek McAllister also chipped in, but it was all ground game. Nothing was really happening through the air. Having seen Minshew play every snap for the Colts last season, I'm not convinced he's a starting caliber NFL QB. He's a fantastic backup, sure, but as a 17-game starter, no way. He needs weapons around him to stand a chance, which is why I liked the Raiders adding him initially. They had Adams, Myers, and Tucker stepping up, along with guys like Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer at tight end. But without Adams, that changes everything. The silver lining for the Raiders is that they can still win some games without Adams, and they'll get extra draft picks that could help them move up for a quarterback. They've already tried to go after young QBs like Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy, but it didn't pan out. This year, though, there are some great quarterback prospects: Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, and Quinn Ewers. I'm not sure about Carson Beck yet, but the Raiders will definitely have options. And if none of those QBs work for them, well, Travis Hunter's in this draft, and he's a total game changer. He could help the Raiders on both offense and defense as a receiver and cornerback. He's a one-of-a-kind talent. Trading Adams might seem like a blow, but getting draft picks for a player who no longer wants to be there is a win for the Raiders. Remember, the whole reason Adams came to Vegas in the first place was to play with Derek Carr. People forget how great they were together. Sure, they didn't win a Super Bowl, but Adams had an incredible season with Carr. 1,516 yards, 100 receptions, 15.2 yards per catch, and 14 touchdowns. That's elite. But since Carr left, it's been downhill. Last year, Adams still put up good numbers: 1,144 yards, 103 catches, and 8 touchdowns. But by his standards, that's a drop. This season, he's got 18 catches for 209 yards over 3 games, averaging 11.6 yards per catch, which is a dip from the 15.2 he had with Carr. So now, Adams wants out. If I'm the Raiders, I'm packaging him for a second-round pick and some additional compensation. Just don't trade him to the Kansas City Chiefs. Sending him to a division rival would be a nightmare. Ideally, he'd go to the NFC, but honestly, I'm not too thrilled about him going to the Jets either. All right, so let's talk about which teams could be in the mix for Davante Adams and how it affects the playoff race. What about the Washington Commanders or the Dallas Cowboys? The Commanders are sitting at 3-1 and could win their division, so their pick will likely be in the 50s. Not ideal if you're the Raiders. Now the Cowboys? That's interesting. Even if they land Adams, I'm not sure how much better they'll be. The Cowboys have been a mess lately, so trading him there could mean getting a higher draft pick, which is a win for the Raiders. That said, I don't think a ton of teams are going to jump at the chance to trade for Adams right now. As we get closer to the November 1st trade deadline, his contract becomes more manageable because it shrinks with each passing game. But remember, He's going to be 32 in December, so while Adams is still great, this isn't like playing a video game where you just trade for a star player and forget about the rest. There are real factors involved. The Raiders should trade him as soon as possible, because the longer they wait, the less leverage they'll have. Some may think teams will keep raising their offers, but I'm not so sure. I expect the Jets to make an offer, and the Steelers could jump in too. Maybe the Saints, considering Adams' history with Derek Carr, or the Jets because of his bond with Aaron Rodgers. But honestly, how many teams are really just one Davante Adams away from winning a Super Bowl? The Ravens come to mind as the most realistic team that could make a run if they get Adams. They could use him as that final piece. The Jets would definitely improve with him, but their defense hasn't lived up to expectations, and the offensive line has been shaky. They're still adjusting to all the changes. The Commanders, though, even with Adams, they aren't Super Bowl contenders. They could compete in the NFC, sure, but they're still a few pieces away from being a serious threat. Their offensive line is inconsistent, and their defense needs work, especially in the secondary. They were picking second in the draft not too long ago, so it's not realistic to think adding Adams suddenly puts them in the big game. So the big question for the Raiders is, who do you trade Adams to, and what do you get in return? If they don't get what they want, do they keep him? But that's another issue. Will Adams even play? He sat out against the Browns and won't be on the field for their next game against Denver, citing a hamstring injury. But let's be real, if Adams was on the Jets right now, I bet that hamstring would feel just fine. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like he just doesn't want to be in Vegas anymore, and the Raiders know that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll be covering the Raiders every day, so stay tuned. Peace.